Welcome to Wings of a Phoenix, Episode 3 Fire, Fear, and Forward Movement. I'm your host, Trina Briscoe Matthews, and I am excited to talk about this topic. When we think about fire in terms of a divorce, I think we're all clear on that. It's the disruption, the upheaval of your life. It's going from a married status to a single status. That's the fire. What we spend less time focused on, or at least what I really wasn't prepared for necessarily, was the fear aspect. And then I want to talk about how I moved from the fear into forward movement. Okay. So I think sometimes people think the divorce is the biggest thing. That's the hardest thing to get through. And in some senses, I understand that. But I know for myself, once I made the decision that I was going to divorce, that part wasn't so difficult because I had, I had come to the conclusion in my mind, I had come to the understanding in my spirit that this was the best thing for me. And so I was okay with that decision. That was not necessarily the hardest part. But then what comes next is, okay, you're going to divorce, now what? And the now what part, that is the part that I think um, that's where the fear sets in. Because now, and I think this happens with a lot of people, now you are moving on to something that you are unfamiliar with, because now I'm stepping into the unknown. And I think whenever we are at the edge of change, it is just natural that fear is going to step in because, again, we're just about to do something that we haven't done before. And not that I hadn't been single before, but I hadn't been single before with 3 children that I needed to support, and at a point in my life where I thought things were stable. So, again, I think that transition is what caused the fear to step in. And I want to take today to really explore what that is and talk about some of the things that were going through my mind at the time. Um, you know, I was wondering, okay, can I do this by myself? Am I going to be able to support the children on my own? Am I going to still be able to flourish in my career with all these things happening in my personal life? And I think, I've mentioned before that right after the divorce, we ended up relocating, and so that was another thing. And okay, and I didn't just relocate to another state, I relocated out of the country. And so there was some fear and nervousness surrounding that. So I want to go into and kind of explore all of these things with you today, just how you move from the fire into fear, where fear shows up, and then how you move past that. What is fear exactly? All right. I was brought up to understand that fear is nothing more than false evidence appearing real. And that is what I believe, and that is how I operate. So when I come upon something where I am feeling fearful, I remind myself, okay, this is just false evidence appearing real. And then how do I approach that? And what I'll do is start to investigate. Okay, what's really going on here? What am I actually afraid of? And so if we take the example I mentioned of, I was worried, was worried and fearful. Can I raise these kids by myself? Am I going to be able to support them? Am I going to be able to provide for them financially, emotionally, all these things? And so I had to really sit with some of those questions. And first off, can I do this alone? I didn't have to do it alone. I did have my parents and They were extremely helpful, supportive. I was concerned about raising 2 young men, they were young babies. My youngest was only 3 at the time of the divorce. My older son was already in his first year in college, he was 18, but I was concerned about that. And again, I didn't have to do it by myself. My dad was extremely instrumental then and still is to this day in raising my young adults now. So he did a fantastic job. I was also concerned, I had my daughter was, I think, 12, 13, so a teenage daughter at the time of the divorce. And I was concerned about her. But again, I was there for her. My mom was there for her. I didn't have to do it alone. So these were things that I had cooked up in my head that were not actually true. And I think that's the thing about fear is that it has its place. It will keep us from, running into a burning building. We're afraid to get burned. Okay. Makes sense. It's going to keep us from some danger. The thing that we have to do with fear, though, is not let it dictate our life and be willing to investigate what's underneath the fear. Because normally there is something else going on. And those are the things that we need to get to. What's really the issue? And I think for me, that's something that is important that we investigate what is really beneath the fear. Because usually there's some other things going on that we have not verbalized or we have not come to recognize for ourselves. And those are the things that we need to understand about fear. Fear is just false evidence appearing real, which means there is something, it's not real. You can move past it. Use fear as a signal, but don't let fear dictate your life. What happens when fear becomes a liability? And what I mean by that is when we are no longer using fear to give us signals, but now we're letting fear dictate our lives. And what that looks like is when we let fear dictate how we move in relationships. And sometimes we stay in relationships longer than we should be out of fear of being alone, or we shrink ourselves in our professions. We don't actually show up in our true, authentic selves in a profession because we're worried about what someone's going to think or how they're going to respond to us, or we're fearful of that, or we accept relationships beneath our worth, again, out of fear. Um, and fear is sneaky. Fear is sneaky. Sometimes fear will show up as logic. Fear will show up as being patient, being responsible. Um, Fear will keep you in your comfort zone. And I think we all know that our comfort zone is also a zone of stagnation. We're not growing when we're comfortable. And I'm not saying that we have to always be uncomfortable, but I am saying that when we want growth and expansion, that's not going to feel great all the time. And it can be uncomfortable. And the fear will have you believing that, it's safe here, you need to stay here. And again, it's sneaky and it keeps you from moving forward. So I think that the whole thing here is to really understand fit, where fear fits in our lives and take clues from it, understand what's going on, investigate it, but don't let it dictate things. Because had I let fear dictate our move overseas after the divorce, there's so many things that I would have missed out on and my kids would have missed out on because that experience has really enriched our lives in just such a way. Um, it's almost hard to explain. But I felt the fear and I did it anyway because I was looking at the best possible option for us was a new environment. It was an opportunity, a career opportunity I did not want to pass up. And even though I wasn't exactly sure how it was going to turn out and whether or not I could do it, I figured, you know, I need to try. I need to be, I can be afraid and I can do it anyway. And that's exactly what I did. Um, because, like I said, fear will keep you from growing and it will keep a lot of wonderful opportunities will become out of your reach because you're too concerned and too fearful of the what ifs. And the thing that we rarely think about, we tend to always think about what if this, and it's always something negative. And the thing is, there's also a whole other side of the what ifs that is positive. What if that opportunity that you have not been applying yourself to, what if it actually does work? You know, what if this experience that you want, that you've been hesitant to go for, what if it actually turns out positive for your good? So I think that is really where we need to um, be okay with being afraid and doing it anyway. Taking the fear and moving forward. Just do it anyway, because otherwise fear will get us stuck. And we don't want to be stuck and we don't want to miss out on opportunities. We want to analyze it for what it's worth and say, okay, it's trying to tell me something. Understand what it is it's trying to tell you. And then you decide how you're going to move forward, but don't let the fear dictate your movements. Before I wrap things up for today, I want to leave you with three questions. Okay. The first one: where am I allowing fear to lead my life? Question number two: who would I be if I didn't let fear take the lead? And the third question: what is underneath this fear and what does it really need from me? Okay. Now remember, fear is just false evidence appearing real. Okay. Take it for what it's worth. It's trying to tell you some information. Get that information. Okay. So let it inform you because fear does have its place. However, don't let fear take your place. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to join me again on the Wings of Phoenix podcast. You can find all of my contact information as well as the reflection questions in the show notes. And until next time, take good care of yourself and keep becoming the woman you were always meant to be.